Cassandra, start the recording. Thank you. You did it. I would like to call the Harbor Committee to order June 15th, 2022. I'd like to call a roll call. If you are here, please respond by saying aye. George Baumgarten.
Aye.
Susan Bryant. Eric Cruz.
Aye.
Yep, I see you. Timothy Davis, aye. Lisa Hewitt.
Aye.
Lori Gibbons.
Aye.
Aye. Jeff Hartwell. Jeff? No. Sean Keneally.
He's coming in now.
I see him.
Yep.
Sean Keneally's new IP or iPhone. Sean, are you here? Mike Sardina.
Here.
So we have a quorum. And I think Susan Bryant may join us. She was with us at the governance. And I know I see Sean Keneally is here. So thank you all for being here.
Barbara Canny's here.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yep.
So the first thing I'd like to do is to vote on the minutes of previous meetings. All the members have received those. I'd like to hear a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I move to accept the minutes.
Any second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? George Baumgarten,
Aye.
Susan Bryant, Eric Cruz,
Aye.
Timothy Davis, aye. Lisa Hewitt,
Aye.
Jeff Hartwell, Sean Keneally, Mike Sardina.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I think that there were a number of items on our agenda that you all received. One of them was the one that we really wanted to tackle tonight was the bylaw regulations for shellfishing and aquaculture. The governance subcommittee just had a meeting on that. They approved moving it to the Harbor Committee. The Harbor Committee should deliberate on that. And then from there, it goes to a number of other forums. Certainly the select board will be involved in that. We'll probably have an open forum. And I believe the town council is reviewing the bylaw as drafted and as you have all received. So with that, I'd like to open it up to the Harbor Committee members for comment. If anybody.
Jim, can I just mention, that the governance committee voted on it in principle. None of us are aquaculture or shellfish regulation experts, and that it was subject to the review. The vote was subject to the review of town council and to the having some sort of open forum.
Thank you. I thought I'd covered that, Lisa, but thank you for adding to it. With that, yes, Jack.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank all of you for serving. The select board really depends upon citizens like you getting the details. So although we will ultimately approve or whatever, when you have hearings and find out how this is going to work, that's very, very valuable because we really depend upon you to find out what the sense of the community and what works. I did also want to make it very clear that the town council reports to the select board. And I gave very clear instructions to our town council to be completely responsive to the needs of this committee. So if you need legal or Kim needs legal or you need legal insights, it will be forthcoming without reservations. So you'll be fully supported for the legal on that. So go to it. And again, from behalf of the town, thank each and every one of you for this hard work. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, this is George Baumgarten. I have a question about the regulations. I did review them briefly. I appreciate that the Actually, I see my video's not on. Let me turn that on. But I appreciate that the governance committee is reviewing them in detail. My question is that they appear to be, quite complete, lots of detail. I was wondering if they are, from another similar town, or if they were, copied and made available with changes appropriate to Cohasset. Just wondering a little bit about where the regulations were derived from, if anybody
Okay,
knows.
thanks,
Yeah.
George.
Can I suggest,
Let me
Tim,
comment on
that-
that, if I may. First of all, just as a bit of background, Cohasset waters have been closed for a number of years for any shell fishing, recreational or commercial. And there are two reasons why they were closed. Number one, we did not have an active shellfish constable. And number two, we did not have a bylaw. At least in the research of everybody that I talked to, we did not have a bylaw. Now, Franny Collins says at some point we had some regulations, but I couldn't find it. And the people I talked to in town hall could not find it. So the two things we need in order to have either recreational or commercial shellfishing or aquaculture are those two things, a shellfish constable and a bylaw. We now have Josh Kimball, who is our shellfish constable, who is probably the most versed shellfish constable in the laws, rules, and regulations of shellfishing of anyone in the state of Massachusetts. In fact, he teaches courses in this. So Josh, we are very fortunate to have Josh here. In terms of the bylaw, I drafted a bylaw a year or so ago, which came from other towns. But Josh, then when he came on board, he drafted the one that you're seeing. And he drafted it from his experience, certainly calling on sources and resources from a number of places, and he could certainly address where they came from. But that's where this came from, George. And
Well,
that's
so
why-
I see that Josh is on the call. Maybe Josh, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little background on that. Unless you created this 26-page document initially for us, it just
Yeah, so definitely. Thank you, George. So yeah, I've got experience from my past employment with the town of Wareham, where I had helped write our new shellfish bylaws that the majority of it actually I helped write. So what I did for Cohasset, because we are very unique in that aspect where we don't have as big as a coastline as communities like Wareham and Falmouth and Bourne and other Cape towns, there really isn't a big need to have an extensive bylaw like they have, but more or less have it be comprehensive and cover everything that we need to cover. So what I had done was I reviewed other towns' bylaws. I reviewed Tim's bylaw because I did not grow up in Cohasset. Tim's lived in Cohasset for a very long time and has knowledge of the water just from being on the harbor committee and also being a seaman out on the water. So he knows the area. So I took bits and pieces from that as well. Did some other research from areas that were also on the North Shore where they're pretty restricted on shellfishing. And this is kind of what I've come up with. That's pretty comprehensive. It covers everything that we need to cover.
thank you, Josh. Appreciate that.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments about the proposed bylaw?
And I suggested Josh, which was very helpful, I think, to the governance subcommittee, discuss the difference between the aquaculture versus shellfish, because that was something that was helpful to me when I was reviewing these.
Yeah, definitely. So there's three things in the town that we're going to be needing to look at. One is recreational shellfishing, which is shellfishing that anyone can go down and dig some clams with a permit. The next aspect of what we're looking at is commercial shellfishing. We'd have to do further study if the town's shellfish population would sustain commercial shellfishing or not. But I've proposed those regulations in the event that it does, and the select board decides to open commercial shellfishing. Commercial shellfishing is different from aquaculture. Commercial shell fishing is where someone will come to me, as I'll be the issuing permit authority for commercial shell fishing. And I will check their seller's card from the Division of Marine Fisheries, make sure they have all proper paperwork with the town clerk filled out, make sure their paperwork with Division of Marine Fisheries is completed. And then I would issue them a commercial permit. What they would do is then, for example, and this is example only, go out to Little Harbor and they could collect or harvest whichever species they are allowed to collect under their permit. They would then take their allowable harvest for the day and go to the fish market to sell it. Whereas we permit aquaculture facilities, that would be the select board would essentially lease out a certain acreage of land, or in this aspect, surface water, to an organization or an individual or a corporation for the purpose of obtaining shellfish seed from another location, putting it in cages or grow out bags on the ocean floor, and growing whichever species of shellfish they decide to grow, whichever is in their permit, to market size, to where then they would sell it. And those are the distinctions. So recreational is basically what I like to call family day. Commercial is where they're going to go out and essentially provide sustenance for their family in regards to making money off of the town's shellfish. And then aquaculture is pretty much where the town is going to be making money off of us leasing out our water.
Thank you, Josh. This is George. One other question. I apologize, my video keeps popping out. What is the, I guess, difference in role? This is maybe to you and to Lori Gibbons. What is the difference in role between your role, Josh, and the harbor master role as it relates to this?
So both positions are definitely going to really have to work hand in hand. Laurie has the vast experience and knowledge of our waterways, where I don't have as much as her. So I'm going to rely on her for a lot of things when it comes to if someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to put an aquaculture grant here, what do you think? I'm going to be running right down to Lighthouse Lane and talking to Laurie to see exactly what her opinion of that would be. And I'm going to rely on it heavily because I don't have the experience in our waterways, but I have a lot of experience in shell fishery management and natural resource management, where I think that's going to be the kind of the other half of the fold here in regards to this. So it is different from the harbor master role, where the harbor master is responsible for moorings and harbor management, as well as search and rescue, law enforcement, to now where the shellfish constable is responsible essentially for basically just the shellfish beds, clams, quahogs, oysters, eels, conch, and mussels. There's a whole bunch other as well. So those are the two separations from the roles.
And there's also kelp and other sea vegetation that's part of aquaculture too, right, Josh?
Correct. Yeah. So we're seeing, especially down in Martha's Vineyard, and I really don't have a whole lot of knowledgeable experience in it because it was kind of not my forte. I kind of enjoyed more oysters than I do eating kelp chips or anything else. So I never really looked into it, but from what I understand in talking with other shellfish constables who are part of the Shellfish Officers Association, is that down in Edgartown, Oaks Bluff, in some locations like Wellfleet, they're seeing an increase in people basically growing kelp. And I always thought as a kid, this is just seaweed floating in. But now to actually think that people are growing kelp and sugar kelp is absolutely amazing. So that's definitely a new frontier that we could face as a town in the coming years.
Good. Thank you. There were a couple of hands up. Yeah, Franny.
Yeah, just one quick question, Josh. Has the requirement for the commercial diggers to send their catches up to Newburyport to be detoxified, has that gone away, or did you just forget to mention it?
No, so from what I was told is that we are not required because we're south of Boston and not considered in Boston Harbor, that our shellfish would not have to be sent to the depuration plant.
Oh, good.
Which
Thanks for that
is good.
clarification.
Yeah, definitely. It's good news for us, certainly.
Yeah,
And
good.
it opens up more avenues if commercial shellfishing was to take place. The only reason, like Tim mentioned, why we're closed right now is because of the inactive shellfish constable status, and that the state actually wants to relinquish control back to the town of our shellfish beds. So they are very eager to do that, and we will be working towards that in the coming months.
And just as another quick aside, you might contact Paul Patterson down Elm Street there. He was the shellfish warden for quite a while, and he probably has copies of those old rules and regulations right there across from the green there at the end of Elm Street.
Yeah. Any other questions,
Yeah,
comments?
I'd like to I'd like to comment that I think that we should actually
Is Susan all right, or is she,
both
You went to shut the teapot off.
in the meantime, does anybody else have a comment or question? Or-
I guess this is George. I'll ask one other question. Similar to the way Lori has jurisdiction over the harbor, even though some of the waters are in Cohasset. Josh, will some of the seabeds that are the shellfish beds that you're discussing, might some of them be on Situate property as well, or is this strictly limited to Cohasset town limits?
So that is something that I actually spoke with Chris Senior this past week about that. And that's something that we're going to have to investigate a little further. In my prior experience, and I'm not sure what past bylaws. I know there was mention of something that was passed in the 50s that gave Cohasset certain control over something out in the harbor. But I would have to investigate that a little bit further. As it stands right now, in my opinion, is that I only have authority in Cohasset jurisdictional waters when it comes to enforcing shellfish rules and regulations. But that could change based dependent on our further investigation with town council and going through bylaws and all that.
Right. Thanks, Josh. And I'll add to that. There is a greater issue of jurisdiction over Cohasset Harbor, some of which is in the town of Situate. But that is ongoing in terms of jurisdiction and what jurisdiction that would mean. However, Josh, as the Cohasset Shellfish Constable, has authority over all shellfish landed in Cohasset. And that means Parker Avenue, Government Island, anywhere else landed in Cohasset.
Interesting. Thank you.
Josh, I have a very quick question that I didn't pick up last time I was flipping through, and I know we were kind of, why can't recreational shellfishing happen on Sundays? I noticed that was one of the pieces that was prohibited on Sundays.
Yeah, so we've yeah, in my past experience, again, this is coming from Wareham, where I worked before. We had a vast majority of people who obviously would be utilizing the beach during the day, particularly Saturdays and Sundays. We'd see more activity on Sundays. And what was happening was that the recreational shellfishing activity was interfering with the usage of the beaches. We saw that people were not properly filling in their holes. And as kids ran across the shoreline, they were falling into the holes. And you only dig about like a 3 or 4 inch hole, depending on where the clam or the quahog is anyways. But, smaller kids who don't have larger legs, that can be problematic. So we developed that, put it in place, that no shellfishing was allowed on Sundays. That was to give, number one, the resource a break from harvesting from all other 6 days. Number two, for safety of beachgoers, And then number 3, kind of just the whole combination of that. And it's really to give the resource a break and the safety of the beachgoers.
And I think, Josh, that in Cohasset, that the resource break is probably the key issue, because it is highly unlikely that there would be any recreational shellfishing done where people are swimming.
Right. And that was another major thing that I was looking at as well, because, recreational shellfishing, it's going to be the talk of the town once regulations get put in place, waters get open. And I wouldn't want to see a whole rush of people going into a certain area that's populated during a nice summer Sunday, and having those traditions of those people who have been there recreating and being out on the beach for so long be destroyed by a bunch of people coming in to harvest clams.
I think the other thing that we should all keep in mind is once this shellfish regulation, this bylaw is approved by the select board, and I think there's an opportunity as we go forward, if there's anything in this that ends up conflicting with other activities in the town, we can always address that and modify it. But I think what
Absolutely.
John's done is create a wonderful bylaw here, a regulation here that we can start with and we can work with. Any other comments, questions?
I just have a quick one, and Susan probably could tell us better, but I'm pretty sure there were anyway clams all along the channel where all the people swim in regards to Sunday, Lisa. I don't know if they're still there, but bye. That was just my input.
Okay. Any other input? Any other comments?
I just had one quick.
Yes,
yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about that pause that they have in resources. The recreational clam permits for Situate that I've had, I didn't get one this year, but I did the last couple of years. They only are good for clamming May through November. So the lovely, lovely warm season for walking out on the flats, is when you get to do recreational shellfishing according to the Situate shellfish permit. So I would definitely check with that, because that's, they've already done some research over there. They've had that in place for quite a while. And because it's basically whatever shellfish are over there are going to make it over there. Makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. David, you had a...
Just briefly, thank you. For those of you who were in the previous meeting, I might be repeating myself, but because the full board's here and it's a different meeting, when it comes to the aquaculture part of the regulations and bylaw that were here, one of the couple important factors is that one of the things that I wanted, I think the board wanted in the subcommittee, is that for the permitting process, is that the harbor committee would be giving an advisory opinion and possibly conditions when they pass it up to the selectmen, who are the licensors or the permittors of that aquaculture. And part of the reason for that is that the selectmen have a number of different permitting hats and licensing hats that they have between Vittler's licenses, beer and wine licenses, one-day permits, permitting, as you've seen the triathlon, the art festival, all these different things as they come. And so by going through the harbor committee, a lot of the issues can be addressed at that level, at least in advisory capacity, and worked out to even some conditions that could be given to the selectmen, instead of having a hearing open up with the selectmen and having them have to figure out everything. So I think that was one important feature of the aquaculture, especially if this does go forward, even if it changes, if it does get passed, the aquaculture portion of it is going to be something that Cohasset has not ever done before. So it's going to need a few sets of eyes. And so having the harbor committee with all the different people and interests that are in the harbor, and of course the harbor master, the natural resource officer, and everyone else. I think that's an important feature of it, that it can work out and smooth things over and make sure a polished application makes its way up. Should one?
Can I?
Yeah. Thank
Can
you,
I
Dave.
advocate for the inclusion of people like Adam, who I believe is on the call, in figuring out what kinds of qualifications people should have. I think that from what I've learned from attending the various meetings with the fishermen is that the people who actually fish really know what it takes to be a responsible fisherman, both economically and ecologically, and in terms of gear. Like if you don't have the right boat to get out there on a Thursday night for an incoming storm on Friday, your gear is going to be all messed up and do all the things that the townspeople don't want it to do. But if you are committed, those guys know all those things that work. So I would really advocate for people who are fishermen to be part of that licensing thing. I don't think it's a thing for selectmen who have very different understandings and maybe no understanding of what works at sea and what works in terms of logistics of getting your boat out there to get your gear.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. As you know, there are two chairs on the Harbor Committee open to commercial fishermen. Neither one of them are filled. Adam Donovan has been a trooper and attended a lot of our meetings and has given us good input as time goes on. We have also had smaller ad hoc commercial fishermen groups to talk about Government Island. We've gotten their opinions on that. As you know, the Government Island design is designed for future commercial fishermen or fishing. If the lobsters decide to migrate to Nova Scotia, then if we are going to have a commercial fishing fleet in Cohasset, it's going to be something other than lobsters. And that's one of the reasons we're pushing this forward so that we can, in fact, encourage commercial fishing as well as recreational fishing. So Adam, if you have any comments, I'd certainly welcome them at this point. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Tim. Yeah, I don't have any comments right now.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I appreciate you staying in touch with that. And should you or any of your colleagues in the commercial fishing fleet have any questions, concerns, or would like to know more about it, please let me know, and we'll certainly bring together another meeting to discuss this.
Perhaps there's one thing that we can bring up. We have 2 empty seats.
Yes.
And only residents of Cohasset can be on the Harbor Committee.
Yes.
And you're leaving a lot of people that have a depth of knowledge about Cohasset Harbor out of the conversation.
Yes. That happens to be the rule and the regulation of the bylaws of Cohasset. If we wish to change that, we can do it, but we have to go through the process. And I've tried to do that in the past and have met with resistance on previous select boards. But if we can, if we really want to do it, we can push that again. We have to get a vote of the select board, and I think we probably have to get a vote of the town meeting as well.
I think it also requires that it may have to go to the general court, meaning the legislature. Can everybody hear me? What I would suggest, this has been a problem because for all the boards and committees, unless you're a resident of the town, you can't serve on them. However, in the interim, to move things along, there's nothing that says that the Harbor Committee cannot have kind of informal members or consultants or whatever you choose to call them, and have them become a regular part, and they can participate in the discussions. They could not vote, but I suspect that that the Harbor Committee would probably vote in accordance with their advice if it was good advice. But that's something in the interim, because I think it is important to hear from them. So that's something that you can do right now and invite other people to your meetings and listen to them. There's nothing to keep them from discussing it.
Thanks, Jack. And as you know, we have. I've invited many commercial fishermen who choose not to come to these meetings. Matt Marr was on the committee and he resigned. Josh Hassam, he lives in Cohasset. I've invited him to be on the committee. I've invited them to come to these meetings. It is open meeting and we listen to everybody. So we certainly could have commercial fishermen participate and would encourage them to do that. So Adam, please reach out to your colleagues, tell them we really would like to hear from them, and we will listen to them.
Both Scott Herzog and Paul Figueredo are active lobstermen, and they live in Cohasset.
Yeah, and they have, they've been reluctant to join the committee as well, because they've both been asked. So.
Yes.
Anyway, moving along, any other comments about this bylaw, this regulation from the Harbor Committee?
Yes,
With that-
yes. Can I speak again? Just because my comments from the previous meeting aren't going to be recorded as part of this record unless I actually say them. I'm disappointed, for the record, that this has gone this far without any integration of the people that do ecology in the town, which with full of loyal Cohasset residents as well as residents of other towns. CSCR, we are out there doing shellfish surveys. And this today was the very first day that I heard about this shellfish bylaw being presented. And I recognize that it has not been done with any fishermen or with any ecologists from CSCR or surrounding towns. And I find that really, really quite worrisome. And I'm encouraging everybody to keep your eyes open and make sure that this is really what we all want, and that it goes through quite a lot of review, because it has issues of fairness, it has issues of competitiveness for fishing families. It has issues of whether Cohasset is affordable for fishing families. It has sustainability. It has competing species. There are a number of species listed in this bylaw, some of which do not even exist here, and some of which are on very scary declines in my little time at CSR compared to my childhood. So I want to make sure that as this stuff goes forward, that you really think about what's going on and we really dig into the issues and make it really real and really smart.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Well, if today was the first time you've heard about this, I'm not sure where you've been, because we certainly have published this in the past. Now, with that, what I would suggest is we move this to the select board. And if the select board, I know, has authorized town council to review it, and will certainly comment to the select board. I also would suggest that once it's with the select board, that they authorize a public meeting for this. I think what we want to do in terms of timing is to be able to get this in a form that we can approve at town meeting. To do that, we need to get it on the docket in August, I believe, Jack. That's when this is all being pulled together. Yeah.
Can it talk?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's a good move. However, I think this committee, if you were to move forward, I would schedule a public hearing on this matter. We'd like to see the committee ask those questions and bring the public in. If trying to get it on the select board agenda with the things that we have in there would be very problematic at this point. Plus, we really think that the expertise is in this harbor committee. You've spent the time on it, and I think that you do a much better job running that. And then when you have had the public hearings, it would be a lot easier for the select board to get it approved, because if it comes before us and we schedule a public hearing and we want to get this done by August, it's almost impossible. So
Okay.
if for next steps, I would say it's within your authority, exercise your authority, answer the questions that Susan brings up and other people, get the public involved and get a consensus of that and put something in front of us that makes sense. And I suspect, well, you'll probably have my support anyway.
Okay. Let me ask you this then.
Can I just say, I agree with Jack, and I believe that the Harbor Committee has.
And we have a public hearing, and how soon do you think we could have a public hearing, Jack? Prior to
you guys.
Okay, so
you have the
public
authority.
hearing, have a public hearing, and then submit it to the select board. In the meantime, when do we think we're going to get a response from town council? Would that be?
I would follow up tomorrow, and I'd be more than. She has gotten back to me. She's been, pretty responsive, and I think you could just tell her that it's a priority. So why don't you figure out what you need? And I think that council ought to be responsive to, we're the client. And I'm sure they will. She's been
All
very
right,
responsive.
well, let's do this. Let me work with Town Hall, with Lauren and Cassandra. We'll set up a public hearing probably after the 4th of July. In the meantime, we'll get any comments from Town Council. We'll have a public hearing. If necessary, we'll have a follow-up meeting, but hopefully we can get this in a form that will go to the select board and then can go on the warrant for the special town meeting in the fall. Does everybody think that's a good idea, or do you have other suggestions?
Okay. Yeah, I would like to suggest that we also get clarity on where we are with DMF and DEP.
With who?
Department of Marine Fisheries and Department of Environmental Protection.
They have not gotten involved in this at this point. They are
And
not.
nobody
they're
thinks
not
that's a
they're
little
not a
strange.
party to this, Susan. That comes
Well, they
later.
usually are involved. So they usually are involved in shellfish
Josh?
issues and shellfish regulations, as far
Yes.
as I can tell.
Yeah.
I'll talk to them tomorrow, though, so that's okay.
Okay, you go right ahead and let us know what you hear.
Well,
Does
they're
Tim,
flying
everybody else-
overhead. They'll be flying overhead tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts?
And I would
about
also
where we
like
go
to
from
say
here?
that
Thank
I
you
think
very
it is
much,
important.
Susan. Thank you,
I
Susan.
think it is important
Thank
that
you.
we
It's very
do
important.
make, I think it is important that we keep this issue in the Harbor Committee, where we have people on the Harbor Committee who are
Thank you.
on these roles because of their relation to the
Thank you.
harbor.
Thank
I
you.
don't think that the selectmen is the place to do it. Those guys are great. They do a lot of service for the town, but do they know the harbor?
Susan,
you know,
the select
I'm not
board,
sure that's
the
their
select
skill
board
set.
has to.
Select
approve
board
this.
Susan, select board just put it back to the harbor committee. Okay,
Okay,
Well,
So there
yeah,
we go.
that's right.
that's
That's
right.
great. That
Already
works.
done.
I am growing
Thank you.
hoarse here. So Susan, thank you very much. I'm growing hoarse. Does anybody else have
Okay.
any comments before we?
Tim, I have my hand up. Tim, I have my hand. I just want to thank everybody. I know this is hard. There's a lot to this. We have a running joke in the State House. It takes 7 years to pass a piece of legislation. Hopefully we can do this in 7 weeks. I think it's important that we just have proper notice of the hearing. So if you're talking about after July 4th, I think that's great. I always think it's at least 2 weeks is respectful. And if we can in some way make sure, and I'm kind of put this in Cassandra's lap, with the demise of our local newspaper, to be able to get it out to the town is going to be tough. So if there's any way or any manner in which we can publicize this, it would be great.
Thank you, Lisa. Josh, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to the DEP and DMF commentary. When it comes to the creation of bylaws, the Division of Marine Fisheries has authorized cities and towns who have authority of their shellfish beds to create bylaws to protect the shellfish, to set regulations, to set catch limits, to regulate the fishery, and to protect the future of the fishery and the town's natural resources. So the Division of Marine Fisheries will have overview of the bylaws, but they are not regulatory. So we're not bound by their comments when we do bring this forward to them and they do review it.
We're losing you, Josh.
Bylaw can be more restrictive than what the state law is currently, but cannot be less. Regards to DEP, so DEP city or town that's creating shellfish regulation had an aquaculture applicant who was seeking to put out moorings in the harbor, and they would then have an overview of the plan, the site plan. That's the only time DEP would get involved with any of this.
Thank you, Josh, for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Tim,
Yes.
very quickly, I just want everybody to know that I sent a email to town council asking her to expedite it and work with Tim So it'll be ready for the special town meeting, and then we want Harbor Committee to conduct the hearings prior to submission to the select board. I
Okay.
trust that
Thank-
meets the Harbor Committee goals. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate
Sounds great.
that. I will connect with town hall tomorrow to set a time for an open meeting, a public meeting to review this.
Right.
Tim, is there
Okay.
some way we can have the proposed draft regulation, with draft written across it, on our the Harbor Committee page so that this will be readily available to anybody?
Yeah, I think what we will do, Lisa, is first of all, I will number all the pages so that everybody knows what page they're referring to. So we'll do that. And then I'll ask Cassandra, I'll put a draft on it, put a draft watermark on it. And then I'll ask Cassandra to post that on our website.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's our schedule moving forward. We do have another item on the agenda, which is the climate summit. George, do you want to pick that one up?
Sure. Let me just share screen briefly. Let's see, hold on, make sure. Can folks see on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so our third and scheduled final Harbor Climate Resilience Forum is a week from tonight at 7 o'clock. And we have two great speakers or panelists, as the case may be. We have Joan Moschino, who's very knowledgeable in this area, as well as Carolyn Mecklenburg. I think folks on this call have heard some of these folks before, but we're going to be very specific around asking and getting perspective on funding opportunities for climate-related projects. So it's not general, it's about climate-related projects. And Lisa and I are meeting later this week, really as these projects relate to, wealthy towns on the South Shore like Cohasset. We really want to zero in and get their perspective on funding, as well as, potentially debunk any old assumptions about how funding either used to work or does work. So I think we're very excited about the topic. We've scheduled it for 7 to 8:30 via Zoom. Don't know if it'll take that long. Would really encourage folks on this call to participate. And similar to other forums, I will be reaching out and asking, I think Eric Cruz and Sean Cornelio have been gracious enough to publish this flyer to the Sailing Club, to the Yacht Club. And Susan, we're going to ask CSCR to publish this as well, if we can, in the next week, so that we have as broad a distribution of this in addition to the town website as we can. So in a week from today. Thank you very much.
The only other thing I would add is
Wednesday.
please publicize this through your social media contacts. It's really great that Joan Moschino has given us this time in a phenomenally busy time in her legislative calendar. So it'd be great to have a nice full screen with those numbers, 78, 79, 80, like we did at one of our original programs.
I think the 22nd's a Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay, it says Monday.
Says Monday.
Oh dear.
Wow, that's a great catch, Barbara.
We'll fix that.
All right, we'll update that. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Just the kind of confusion that messes things up. Yep. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
So it
Monday
is
or
the
Wednesday?
22nd, not Monday. Yeah,
You're
Do you
right.
want Monday or do you want Wednesday, George?
Yeah,
We're
we're
doing it Wednesday, a week from today.
okay.
Wednesday, okay.
And I will make that change and distribute this far and wide following the meeting.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, any other questions, any other points that anybody wants to make from the committee before we adjourn?
Tim, one comment.
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very briefly. Just so you know that one of the things the select board on our goals is to take some of the lingering infrastructure stuff and get it funded and started right away. This is not really all the major things, but if there are things that we can do quickly and easily, we want to do that, and we want to put together a funding thing so we can get some of these lingering things done. So for the harbor perspective, and I've already talked to Tim about that, if there are things in the harbor that are not, I don't want to use the overworked shovel ready, but shovel ready or close to it that are achievable, understandable, and are not going to be controversial, please bring it to our attention so we can get it incorporated. And again, thank you all for your work here.
Thanks, Jack. And as you know, I've sent a number of things that fall in that category, engineering studies of the breakwater and the seawalls. Of course, the governance issue with Situate is important, that we're working through that, and also the cleaning up of the Gulf River. So there are a number of things in the harbor plan that have priorities, and I think the governance committee has put together a list of their priorities. The CHIP has put together a list of their priorities, and we forwarded that to the select board. But I'll review that again and make sure you have that.
Yeah, and understand it's a fairly limited. We're not trying to do everything, but there are some projects that needed to get done, and we want to get those done. Some of the long-term planning, not so much because it's a long term, but there's some stuff that just needs to be done, and it's cluttering up the discussion. So, like for instance, what do we do with the breakwater? How do we have a plan with Situate? But that right now for this part of our goals is not what we're trying to focus on.
But Jack, we have, as you know, the governance subcommittee, and I believe Tim has also, we've had 2 meetings, one with Chris Senior, one independently with council, discussing how to put an intermunicipal agreement together.
But
and as I mentioned to you, we're waiting to hear back from council. It's been a while. So that's why I've been kind of tickling people to say, you know, where's the there?
Well, as you know, I've been following that very closely, but this part of the goals, we're not directing it for those types, or those are kind of political decisions, organizational decisions. We're looking for things like Parker Avenue boat ramp. We're looking like things like get the government island conveyor system. We're looking for those types of projects. The other things which I've been on top of, and as many of you know, been to a lot of hearings and trying to figure it out, are pretty thorny political issues. And that is something I'm not saying we will not be handling it, but I was just trying to bring the Harbor Committee aware of one aspect of what we're trying to move forward quickly. And that's not to denigrate or say that's less important, because I think that those issues are extremely important, but that's not this particular goal.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Lisa. Yes, George.
Tim, I know are we going to have another meeting to go through the priorities at some point?
I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. The priorities that we've all been reviewing, have you got a concern about those, or were you like?
No, it's just we distributed a document, I think, that this group saw only for the first time this morning, and tried to ran out of time to discuss it at our previous meeting.
Well, we will have another. Yeah, we'll have another meeting on the priorities. That's a good point, George. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, with that, thank you all very much. I appreciate you joining us, and I will be in touch with you on our next move forward. Enjoy the evening.
Tim,
Thanks.
can you, well, they leave, all right.
You need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah. Didn't get them fast enough.
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Thanks,
Mr. Mayor?
folks.
all in favor signify by saying bye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks all. Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Christina.
See everyone later.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.